Hello, ghouls and ghoulies. Welcome to Scary and Bizarre Short Stories. I'm your host, Larry Lee Roten. This story is scary. It is supposed to be true, and after listening to it when I was 6 years old, it left me scarred to this day. I hope you enjoy this story. It's called The Wicked House. The old house was abandoned years ago. Why? No one knows. Rumors have it that the owners just disappeared, and no sign of them remained but stained walls and floors covered with blood. The elements were slowly gnawing away at the structure as if trying to erase the evil the old house possessed. The peeling paint resembled old skin, and the windows eventually gave way to years of abuse, leaving gaping holes that allowed wildlife to intrude upon the house's horrible past. As the years passed, the once manicured yard succumbed to briars, wild grasses, and unruly bushes. A small path led toward the front door, but it, too, had given way to knee-high grass. It seemed as if Mother Nature was trying to heal the scars of whatever transpired within those walls. Few remembered the old house still existed as it slowly disappeared into the trees. It had been forgotten. However, occasionally, some people visited the house when traveling from San Francisco to Kansas. These visitors were inexperienced hobos, riding the rail for free when given a chance. The more experienced hobos avoided the old house like the plague. There were evil tales about the old house, and the stories circulated around campfires for hundreds of miles. This story is about two men who made the fatal mistake of entering the old home one evening. I met them in a boxcar while hitching a ride. As we rounded the bend, they spied the old house perched grimly atop the hill. From my many journeys through the region, I knew the rumors well. That house, I began, my voice carrying a note of caution, has a reputation. Many who sought shelter within its walls have never been seen again. Undeterred by my warning, the two men shared a glance filled with curiosity and defiance. A night indoors beats another night on the rails, one of them argued, his voice rough but resolute. His partner nodded in agreement, their minds set on exploring the mysterious house. I remember that day. It was All Hallows Eve, and again, I warned the two men that the old house on the hill wasn't a place to be on Halloween. They laughed, jumping off the train. I watched as they headed toward the old house. I too hopped off the train, but I didn't head for the old deteriorating house. Instead, I headed toward a small patch of woods across from the tracks. I had stayed in these woods before and could see the old house on the small hill from the tree line. However, I'd often heard strange noises from that knoll, screaming late at night and in the early morning hours. I spent my nights in the woods, not daring to go near that place. I pitched my tent and sat cooking a pot of stew. The night was dark and the bellowing clouds were thick, blocking any light from the moon and stars. It was one of those nights when I could feel something evil stirring. I wondered about the two men I had met. They were friendly, and we shared a boxcar for 3 days before hopping off to stretch our legs. We did that often. We'd spend a couple of days riding and then find a spot where the train would slow and jump off for a day or two. Then we'd climb back on and continue our journey the next day. That night was unusually cool, and there was no light from the moon or stars. All was dark. At about 3 in the morning, I awoke to screams coming from the house on the hill. The shrieks lasted for a while, and then all went quiet. I shivered as I laid in my tent. But it wasn't from the cold. It was from the evil that floated in the air. I could feel something wicked stirring. The following day, I stood on the tracks. The train wouldn't be by for some time, but the sound I heard from the old house intrigued me. I didn't want to go up that knoll to the old house, but I was surprised that the two men hadn't come down the hill. The bright sun gave me a sense of bravery, so I dropped my gear and walked toward the house. The hill wasn't steep, more like a slight rise, so walking was easy. I saw the path leading to the front door. I hesitated, my senses telling me not to go near the old home. However, I continued my steps. As I stepped on the front porch, the boards creaked and chills ran up my spine. I wanted to run, but steadied my nerves. The two men I had met while riding the rails were young and inexperienced at being a hobo, and I was worried about them. They ignored my warning about staying in this old dwelling. I pushed the door open and whispered for them. There was no answer. I didn't want to enter the house, so I called them again. Again, there was no answer. I stepped into the room. As I scanned the room, a flash of horror swept over me. I could feel pure evil, and I knew it was watching me. I couldn't see anyone, but knew something wicked inhabited the house. I scanned the room, looking for the two men. I saw an old couch and a bloody sleeping bag. The bag had been ripped open and was dripping with blood. Another sleeping bag lay on the floor, torn apart, lying in a pool of blood. I wanted to run, but stepped closer to the couch. The next thing I saw has tormented me to this day. Stacked on the floor in a small heap were fingernails and toenails. Nothing else but blood remained. The nails were sucked clean of blood and looked to have been placed precisely in a neat pile. I ran out of the house and down the hill. An hour later, the train rounded the bend, and as it slowed, I jumped into a boxcar. I don't know what killed the two young men I had met and shared the rails with earlier. I knew they were gone, and no one would probably miss them. I knew I would remember our trip together, but I elected never to ride that rail again. There's something wicked living in that old house, and I considered myself lucky to have camped in the woods. That morning, I was still alive, surviving a dark Halloween night. Now, I tell other hobos about the wicked house on the hill. Beware, I'd say. The old house on that hill is evil, and something malevolent lives there. I hope you enjoyed this story. My dad worked on the railroad for years. He told me this story, and afterwards, I must say, I never forgot the scary tale. Do houses like this exist? Are there monsters out there that will devour you? I hope not. However, when I see an old structure sitting alone, forgotten by the world, I wonder what evil roams within its walls. I hope you enjoyed this scary and bizarre short story. If you would, please subscribe and give this story a thumbs up. I would appreciate it. As always, thank you for visiting my channel.